Today we're doing something a little different. We're going to take an old blueprint for democracy, like an 18th century one, and see how it holds up against the absolute chaos of today. We're basically going to draw a straight line from a philosopher's brilliant idea to the information wars we're all living through.
So here is a wild thought. What in the world does some French philosopher from the 1700s have to do with a crazy argument you might see on Reddit today? You know, the kind that just goes completely off the rails? Well, the answer is kinda everything. It gets right to the heart of what makes a society work, or what makes it fall apart.
All right, let's set the stage. We need to go back to the beginning, to the blueprint itself. So we're jumping in our time machine, heading back to the Enlightenment to talk about a political thinker named Montesquieu. This guy's ideas were so huge, they literally became part of the foundation for modern democracies. Yeah, including the US Constitution.
And this quote? This is pretty much his whole deal in a nutshell. Montesquieu was absolutely obsessed with one thing: the abuse of power. And his solution was brilliant because it was so simple. He basically said, hey, let's not trust anybody with too much power. Instead, you build a system where power is a check to power. You have these different branches of government, the legislative, executive, judicial, and their whole job is to keep each other in line. It's a built-in safety mechanism so no one person or group can just run away with the whole show.
And we really need to get what he meant by liberty, because it's not what you might think. It's not about anarchy or doing whatever you feel like. For him, real political liberty was about a sense of security. It's that feeling of calm you get when you know you're living under a set of clear, predictable laws, not just subject to the random mood of a king or a dictator. So it's freedom from abuse, which is totally different from freedom from rules.
Okay, and this is where it gets super interesting. He said a monarchy can kind of run on this idea of honor, a system of who's who, ranks and all that. But a republic, a place where the people are in charge, that needs something totally different. A secret ingredient, if you will. And that ingredient is virtue. And he didn't mean it in a religious way. He meant civic virtue, like a genuine love for your country and its laws, and this is the big one, being willing to put the good of everyone above your own personal gain. Without that, he said, a republic just rots from the inside out. Remember that word, virtue. It's going to be important.
All right, let's fast forward. We're leaving the 18th century behind and jumping straight into our modern mess. Because there's a threat today that takes direct aim at that whole idea of civic virtue we were just talking about. And that threat is called information pollution.
This definition comes from a really smart report by the German Institute of Development and Sustainability, and it just nails it. We're not just talking about fake news here. Think of information pollution more like a chemical that eats away at the glue holding a society together. It makes it impossible for us to agree on who we even are as a country, and it just destroys the trust we need to work together on, well, anything.
And it's not random. There's actually a playbook for this. It's a classic populist strategy. First, you just slice society in two. It's us versus them. Then you define us as the good, normal, everyday people, and them as, the corrupt elites, the outsiders, whoever. Step 3, you grab the giant megaphone that is social media and you just blast that simple, divisive message 24/7. And the final result? Trust just evaporates. And that civic virtue that Montesquieu said was so essential? It's got no chance in that kind of environment.
Okay, so this isn't just some abstract theory. The report we're looking at zeroes in on Mexico as a case study, and it shows exactly how this plays out in the real world, and how it really messes with the very institutions that Montesquieu said were supposed to keep power in check. And what they found is, well, it's pretty alarming. It points to this systematic breakdown of all those checks and balances. The media landscape becomes less neutral. Groups that are supposed to be watchdogs get attacked. Those independent institutions designed to hold people accountable, they're getting weaker. Even just getting access to basic public information, a fundamental tool for any citizen, is getting harder.
But this is probably the most chilling part of the whole thing. What are you supposed to do when the government itself, the very body that's supposed to be a source of reliable information, becomes one of the main sources of disinformation? It's a total flip of what a government is supposed to do in a functioning democracy.
And again, this isn't just a vague accusation. The report points to a super specific, pretty wild example. The president's press conference has this weekly segment, a segment that's basically dedicated to attacking journalists and news outlets that are critical of the government. I mean, think about that. That is information pollution coming directly from the top.
So we've seen the big picture theory, and we've looked at a whole country as a case study.
But how does all this toxic stuff actually show up in our day-to-day lives, in the conversations we have online? For that, we're going to look at a Reddit thread, one with a very familiar title. Yes, both sides are bad.
This comment right here is a masterclass in a tactic you've probably heard of: whataboutism. See how it doesn't even try to address the first point about an election? Nope, it just immediately pivots to something else entirely. The goal here isn't to have a real conversation or find the truth. It's just a way to throw up a smokescreen to shut down the argument by pretending two completely different things are the same.
And this comment, this one really gets to the end game of all this information pollution. You end up with fractured realities. We're not even disagreeing about opinions anymore. We're disagreeing about what even happened. When one side is convinced the other is just living in a world of misinformation, and vice versa, you can't have a conversation. It's just a no-you shouting match where nobody is even on the same planet, factually speaking.
But you know, even in the middle of all that back and forth, you find comments like this. Someone trying to pull back and find some common ground, to be reasonable. But it raises a huge question, right? How are you supposed to find that middle ground when the very tools you need to do it, like a shared set of basic facts, have been completely shattered?
Okay, let's tie all of this together. We started with Montesquieu's beautiful blueprint for democracy. We looked at this modern sickness of information pollution. We saw how it plays out in a real country and in our own online arguments. So, why is it so important to connect these dots right now?
It brings us right back to Montesquieu's original warning. I mean, it's like he saw the future. He said a republic falls apart when the people lose that virtue, when they just stop caring about public issues, when they get more interested in their own stuff, or maybe just the thrill of dunking on the other side online, than in the health of the country. And that indifference, that's exactly the kind of state information pollution is engineered to produce.
And listen to how the modern report puts it. It's basically saying the exact same thing as our 18th century philosopher, just in today's language. Information pollution is a direct attack on our ability to talk to each other, to participate in our own government, and to have the freedoms that only exist when a society is stable and holds together. It's not just a side issue, it's a threat to the fundamental mechanics of how democracy is supposed to work.
So I guess it all boils down to this one simple idea. Montesquieu's entire blueprint for democracy was built on a foundation, the foundation that we all basically agree on what's real. But what happens when that foundation just shatters? If we're all standing on our own separate, conflicting versions of the truth, how in the world do we find the common ground we need to build anything? It's an old question, but we're the ones who have to figure out the answer. Thanks for joining me.